Welcome to the Y on Earth Community Podcast. Today I'm here with Artem Nikulkov, and we are coming at you with a special coronavirus episode. And you may remember Artem from a previous podcast episode, in fact, episode number 31, where we talked about digital media and communication technologies enabling our sustainability efforts around the world. So just to remind you, Artem is one of the global advisory board members of the Y on Earth community and is also the founder and CEO of Earth Coast Productions, which does media and video production work for all kinds of companies and organizations doing great things in terms of sustainability, social enterprise, etc. We'll talk more about that. But we're here out in the woods outside of Boulder, and this is the beginning of the first week of voluntary lockdown in the United States because of coronavirus. And we thought we'd share a bunch of things with you in terms of what we're up to and how we're navigating these uncharted waters. And so Artem, I'm really grateful we could get together and share this time and hopefully share a few insights with folks.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here, and thanks for inviting me back on the podcast. And it's always good to be in front of the camera. I'm a lot of times editing the other episodes and kind of behind the camera on a lot of these things. So it's always good to be in front of the camera and getting a chance to speak. And we're obviously living through uncertain times with this COVID-19, the novel coronavirus, and it's novel in its chemical makeup and its structure. It's unknown to the medical community, the biological community, and I think it's interesting that novelty and uncertainty are so closely related, but one could be coming from a place of curiosity and just a place of trying to understand something new, and the other more from a place of anxiety and anxiousness and just like uncertainty and instability. And so you kind of have these two paths that diverge there. So I find that interesting to consider. And in thinking about that, how we react to it is so important. Taking the time to take stock in our own being, of where we're at and what we're doing, how we're reacting, how we're supporting our friends and family and loved ones through this time. And it's just so critical to remember that why we're here and how we're connecting with one another, even if we are in the time of social distancing. And video, especially live video, is certainly a wonderful way to continue our somewhat normal day-to-day operations. So I think for people right now, it's important to just really pause and be grounded and take a breath first and foremost, and really feel into your own being in where you sit, where you spend the night, the people that you are in direct contact with, if you're living with someone or if you're by yourself, but just really taking stock of all of those things, knowing that that's your kind of current bubble, and supporting that so that you can then support others who are outside of that circle at the moment. And there are some really wonderful ways that we can continue to stay engaged and continue to create art and continue to stay inspired and be inspired and to create from that space. All of those perhaps unfinished projects that we've been dreaming into our lives, this is a wonderful opportunity to work on that, and also to reach out to people who are also stuck in their own little bubbles somewhere. And we have, fortunately, the digital means to continue the conversation and to invite others to collaborate in our work. And I just find that so wonderful. I know you and I have been meeting as well, and just discussing things that are going on in our personal lives as friends and how powerful that is. And over this next week, we might need to do that virtually as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it brings up so many opportunities, I think. And I don't know if the microphones are picking them up well, but we can hear a lot of birds singing around us. And one of our hashtag ideas over the last couple days has been spring is not canceled. And truly, although our human systems, our economic systems are considerably disrupted at the moment, the rest of the living biosphere on this planet is going through its ordinary seasonal cycles. And here in the northern hemisphere, where most of us humans live, there is a changing from winter to spring underway now. And I think that in all of this is some silver lining to deepen our connection to that reality of living here on planet Earth. And we've got a lot of fun things to share with you. I'm super excited. We actually have, Artem mentioned, our creativity and generative endeavors. We've got a few things in that area to share with you, and thought that it might be a nice way to frame all of this, to borrow a concept that we first heard about from Dr. Jandel Allen-Davis, who actually was on podcast episode number 30, if you want to check that out. And she was talking about VUCA, V-U-C-A, and VUCA PRIME. And VUCA is when we're characterizing situations or systems as being marked by volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And obviously those conditions, those attributes can cause heightened anxiety, can certainly trigger fear response mechanisms in our nervous system. And so there's an antidote, there's a flip side to that coin called VUCA PRIME, and that stands for vision, understanding, the C is, I gotta look, clarity, that's it, and agility. And so Dr. Allen-Davis has a beautiful discussion about that in podcast episode number 30. And it I think gives us a wonderful, relatively simple framework to think about how we're cultivating those latter four, vision, understanding, clarity, and agility, in a way that enhances our own individual effectiveness, of course, our quality of life, and also helps us to become sources of strength, stability, and sensibility in our communities when we're going through these kinds of challenges together.
Absolutely. Yeah, and understanding that we are not trying to push away or ignore the volatility and the uncertainty and the complexity and the ambiguity of the situation at hand, because everything around COVID-19 and the current economic impacts that's having, and the social repercussions that we're all feeling as part of this, that is all there. And so I think they really do go in hand. It's not, VUCA or VUCA PRIME. It's really both. And knowing that the first VUCA of volatility and uncertainty is really the outer that we don't necessarily have control over, but the VUCA PRIME is something that we have complete inner control over. And how do we strengthen ourselves mentally and physically, and certainly our immune system at this point, to be in the best place to react with clarity to the ambiguous situation at hand. And I'm sure you can speak more on at least one of the ways that people can take care of themselves, and by taking care of yourself, continuing to take care of others in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're going to share a handful of ideas and recommendations and invitations with you all In many respects, we here over the last few days, Artem, have had a handful of strategy meetings and have essentially pivoted, and this goes to that agility point. We've pivoted a bit and have reprioritized some of our projects and campaigns because of COVID-19. So one of the things that we're really emphasizing is the importance of our own self-care in these times. We know that keeping our stress levels low corresponds and correlates to keeping our immune systems strong. And of course, being outside is one of the strategies that we have to keep our stress levels low. And we have some others we'll share. One in particular is that with the Waylay Waters CBD hemp aromatherapy soaking salts, basically if you're at home and going to be at home for several days, what you can do is order some of the Waylay Waters soaking salts and create a home spa experience for yourself. Not only do the salts themselves have de-stressing properties, of course the CBD hemp is an amazing plant medicine for us with phytonutrients that contribute to health and well-being in a multiple of ways. And then the aromatherapy on top of that, the essential oils that we've selected in the 5 different blends, basically further help with antimicrobial attributes and additional stress relief attributes. There's even a lavender blend, for example, and brought the jars here just so we can show folks. And so, yeah, here's lavender. Here's aphrodisia, right? If you're home with your honey, hey, take a bath together. What a great opportunity to deepen into your intimacy together. There's a eucalyptus, right? Kind of a nice standard standby. We know eucalyptus is helpful with lung ailments. So if you're feeling a little bit of symptomatic stuff going on with your lungs, eucalyptus can be helpful. Rosemary and pine is my most favorite. This one is absolutely brings you into the experience of forest. Whether you're in a big city or out in a remote area, this is such an exquisite piece, and we know that rosemary and pine have special healing attributes as well. And then there's the Moontime blend, which is the geranium and neroli, and it's specially formulated for women going through their menstrual cycle. But it's just a wonderful blend that any of us can use at any time, and has some really nice relaxing and healing attributes there. So with Waylay Waters, we have a monthly giving program, and you can make a donation at 3 levels, $33, $88, or $133 to the Y on Earth community, which is a nonprofit, and you'll receive monthly shipments of either 1, 3, or 5 of these jars. Each jar is enough for 2 baths, right? So that's 2, 6, or 10 baths per month. And those proceeds are helping all of our community mobilization, climate action, soil regeneration, culture of kindness work. And one of the things that we've accelerated is the launch of our CBD hemp-infused salves. And so we've got Soothe, which is in the organic coconut oil base. We've got Frost, which is a menthol wintergreen essential oil piece, kind of like a icy hot. And then we've got Sweet Heat, which is the sensual aphrodisiac salve that you can use as a massage oil with your honey. And so we're going to accelerate, as a result of all of this, getting these products available within the very near term, the next week or so. And for the first 10 folks who join our monthly giving program for the soaking salts, we will give you one of these tins for free, whichever of the 3 you want to try out. And we're happy to get that to you. And that is another way to help with our stress relief, aches and pains, all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the ways we've pivoted. And Waylay Waters is one of the social enterprise companies that Y on Earth is partnered with, and all the proceeds go to supporting the work of the Y on Earth community. So we're really excited about that kind of ecosystem, and we'll talk a little more about some of the others that are coming down the pipeline as well in our social enterprise work. But yeah, that home wellness and personal care is even more important in these times, right? And we have some wonderful offerings to share with folks.
Yeah, in a major way. Taking care of one's body and just feeling present, truly present for yourself so you can be present for others is so vital. I know for me, taking a Whaley Waters bath soak is such a truly retreat at the house. It's something that really is creating that spa experience, and when you set yourself up for that, for me it's getting a book out and candles and setting up obviously a bathtub full of hot water. It's such a wonderful experience, and being able to ground into that all of these other realms of human experience are still available. Like, human experience isn't canceled, and certainly spring isn't canceled either. And so that's something that's really important right now. Take a bath, soak, do yoga, do art, connect with people that you can collaborate with, work on those projects that you haven't really picked up in a while, or that you are working on and are really looking forward to completing. It's a wonderful time for that. And as far as coming back to the hashtag of springs is not canceled, planting gardens and planting your own garden and growing your own food right now is the prime time to be getting the seedlings going and working with biodynamics and getting some of the prep for the seedlings and placing it in the garden as well. That's something that you can do and really lead the way and show to your neighbors as well, who might be cooped up in their apartments or homes, that their life continues. Spring is not canceled. The birds are chirping, and we can be planting our own food, especially when you go to the grocery store and there's not even enough ingredients to put a salad together. Bananas are sold out. All these things are just kind of off the shelves, and so it really causes you to pause and think, how do we structure more resiliency into our community, into our everyday life, and how do we really create this future of community where we get to share the abundance that is truly available to us on this planet. And it's not a space limitation. I mean, you can grow a small herb garden and some tomatoes and peppers on a windowsill in an apartment. And I've actually recently seen a really cool video of how someone has created a complete aquaponics system inside of their New York apartment. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is in a high-rise building. There's not a patch of soil anywhere, and they just have a full functioning aquaponics system with an herb garden. I mean, it's just wonderful to see. And so it really just goes to show that it's not a limitation of space, but it's an application of our creativity, and also an application of the mother of creation is necessity. Mm-hmm. And the mother of invention rather, but right. Also follow through in a certain way, like right. Getting those projects really activated this is the primary time to be doing that. And again, leading the way and communicating with your friends and family about how you can do that and finding the support that you need. Not the least of which is the Wine Earth community. There's a wonderful network of Wine Earth ambassadors who would be more than happy to offer suggestions and offer guidance and other tips and resources on how to grow your own food and how to really implement these things, whether you have a patch of dirt accessible to you in your condo plex or an apartment building, or if you're fortunate enough to have a yard.
Yeah, it's there's so much that you're hitting on, Artem, that I'm really excited about, and feel this increasing surge of energy. It reminds me of that transition from winter to spring. Mm. And one of the things that we're working on and we'll have available pretty soon, is a new social enterprise called Soilworks, where we're putting together biodynamic soil amendment wrapped in almost like a bath bomb for your garden or your yard, in a magnesium sulfate sphere that you can stir into water. And it's this kind of fun fusion way of approaching biodynamics that gets those probiotics into the soil, into the landscape. And that's one of the things we're accelerating now on our timeline in terms of our 2020 action plan. And you can find the 2020 action plan on the whyonearth.org website in the community section. Right toward the top there is the page called Action Plan. And you'll see a little mention of Soilworks in there. What we're doing with Soilworks is collaborating with a handful of biodynamic farms situated all around North America and making these very special organic compost land medicine applications available. And you can use these not only in your yards and gardens, if you're so fortunate to have those, but also in your potted houseplants inside. And I want to be sure to mention that we did a podcast episode with Brigitte Mars, the preeminent herbalist and author on herbal medicine. That's podcast episode number 19. And in there, the main theme and topic of the discussion was herbal medicine for our stress management practices. Of course, I recall her mentioning the three key herbs for health and well-being are dandelion, nettles, and hemp. And again, back to the Waylay waters, right? We got that covered for you. Dandelion, it's springtime. Dandelion will be popping up here soon. And of course, the last thing we want to do is spray those with poison. We want to leave some of those flowers growing for the bees. It's some of the earliest bee food in the springtime. And then we can also eat some of those flowers and leaves and later on roots, and incredible immune boosting properties that come from these dandelions. And of course, nettles are a very dynamic accumulator herbaceous species that have high levels of iron and all sorts of other vitamins and nutrients that boost, fortify our immune systems. So definitely check out podcast episode 19 with Brigitte Mars, because she gives so many wonderful pointers and suggestions that we can be practicing day in and day out. And yeah, I just want to really sort of double down on this emphasis on the soil and the planting. And we even brought a little bowl of soil here. You know, when we get our hands directly engaged with the living soil, we're interacting with all of these beneficial microbes that boost our immune system. There's science now showing the relationship there. Not to mention that interacting with those soil microorganisms is also going to boost our serotonin production, right? It's also going to help us feel a bit lighter and more joyful and less stressed. And, we talk about that quite a bit in our soil stewardship handbook and several of the podcast episodes where we're talking with farmers and gardeners and so on. But this opportunity we have right now with the approaching spring to really double and triple down, quintuple down on our connecting with soil. It's actually going to help boost our immune system and help our day-to-day quality of life.
Absolutely. Yeah, and being able to grow your own food, however much, it still augments the actual purchases that you have to make at the store. So that helps you out economically that way, and also the quality of the food is so much better when you grow it and it's straight from the land, and it also connects you with the soil. I mean, if you don't have a soil practice in terms of touching and grounding soil every day, gardening creates that for you. It creates that space to have essentially soil meditation as part of your life. And it's something that's so unique, and we all need it. I mean, we all need to walk barefoot on grass and natural forest floors. Obviously, as the weather warms up, that's going to be a lot easier to do. And physically touching soil and working with the earth is something that reminds us of how connected we are to this planet and the things that truly matter and the things that are a constant. The changing of the seasons, even though there's all kinds of things that are shifting in that as part of global climate change, we can still rely on the seasons being here, on the birds showing up in the spring and singing beautiful birdsong.
There's a cute guy flying around off camera there.
Yeah, and global markets will rise and they'll fall, and all kinds of changes will happen, and political figures will be at the seat of power, and another day they won't, and you might agree with them, you might disagree with them, but at the end of the day, the things that we can rely on are the natural processes of this planet, of this earth, and the nature that sustains us. The large question is, how do we integrate that into our modern lives, and how do we really live in both of those worlds? How do we grow a garden and grow our own food and take care of really replenishing the soil and enriching the soil, not depleting it, meanwhile being a heavily technological species, and being able to track, hashtag spring is not canceled, on our wonderful smart devices here. So it really is a both approach, and there is a wonderful way that we can scale our collaboration and the way that we communicate to our friends, our family, and to people that we have never met or would have never met without some of these digital technologies and platforms that are available to us. And we've been using social media for a while now, and all of these wonderful tools, and I just invite everyone to, and encourage everyone to participate in an encouraging way, and that's the other reason to take care of yourself and have a practice of well-being, whether it's physical practice or art and poetry or doing a soak in a bath. Those are all wonderful practices, and part of the reason to do that is so that you can stay centered when people do get into a comment war online or whatever, and you can be someone that offers a positive suggestion and offers a way forward of here's what we can be doing. And an example of that it directly relates to current COVID-19 situation. I was listening to a podcast on Vox, and they were sharing on the latest situation in Italy and how the country's essentially complete lockdown, and the entire population is not really allowed to leave their homes, with the exception of going to the grocery store or the pharmacy, and even then it's a regulated system so that there aren't too many people out on the streets or at a grocery store at any one time. So it's a very challenging situation to be living in, and how there are communities with apartment buildings who are coming together and opening their windows into the courtyard and singing together.
Yeah, amazing.
And it's an example of how we can really create beautiful, inspirational, encouraging ways for ourselves to keep moving forward, because it doesn't really serve anyone to be in freak out mode. Yeah. So being able to be that one person that stands up and does something different, something that is grounded and centered, is such a powerful catalyst wherever you are at, whichever community you're a part of. And how wonderful it is to be that person, or someone that joins a group of people that are already doing wonderful things,
Yeah.
And participate in that way.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Artem, I want to be sure to mention the ambassador program, just in case some of the audience might be interested in learning more about that or becoming an ambassador. On the in the community section of the whyonearth.org website, you'll see a page called Become an Ambassador, and the process to get involved and to engage and get activated is really straightforward. So want to just give a shout out to our ambassadors who are located throughout Colorado, throughout the United States, and even in multiple countries around the world. The work that you're doing through your demonstrations, your community gathering events, obviously not this week on the community gathering events, but all of that is the cumulative efforts and gestures that are helping to transform our culture. And as you were talking, Artem, about the combination of the communication technology, the videos, the social media, and the connecting with soil and growing our own food, it reminded me of this essay called The Meta-Industrial Village that we spoke about in our podcast. I was realizing we recorded that about a year ago. And The Meta-Industrial Village is an essay that was written by William Irwin Thompson when he was at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, in the 70s. And he was already anticipating a future that would be marked by very robust global communication technologies, and that would be complemented by a deliberate returning to sort of localizing connections with soil, productions of food, so forth and so on, that create more resilient and sustainable supply chains and systems for our basic needs. And so it just reminded me that that's a wonderful resource that I would encourage folks to track down. Email us through the website. I do have a PDF of the essay I'd be happy to share. It's Meta-Industrial Village in a collection of essays called Darkness and Scattered Light by William Irwin Thompson. And, one of the other real silver linings in this very incredible challenge that we're facing is it's forcing us to slow down a bit. And one of the opportunities we have when we're slowing down a bit is to read more. And I am a huge fan of reading, not only for it as a mechanism to learn new knowledge and potentially even gain some wisdom, but I think it also does something in our mind and in our nervous system that helps us calm down and relax a bit. And I know you are holding a book here, Artem, and I thought, maybe it's an opportunity to share this one with our audience, and I can share one that I just started a week or two ago.
Sure. Well, this is a book that Aaron has turned me onto, so thank you, Aaron, for that.
Yeah.
I just started reading. It's called The Future of Money by Bernard Lettier, and it is a really wonderful book on the four converging forces right now in our world. And what's interesting about reading this book is that it was written in mid-1990s, and 2000 was something that was around the corner, and 2020 was something that was in a distant future. And the way that the forces are really compounding between our technology, loss of biodiversity, and climate change, the age wave that he expounds on the book, in the book, and these forces really shaping our society in a completely different way, and being aware of them in the way that they are active and being able to shape our future in relationship with money is such a powerful way to think, and to also encourage to create local currencies, ways of bartering with each other, and ways of exchanging value that is outside of the modern economic system, which is very fragile, as this current situation highlights it yet again. So the more that we can be committed to building resiliency in our communities, in the lives that we lead, and the way that we exchange value, the better off we are, and the more sustainable and more resilient of a world we're building for ourselves and future generations. So it's a powerful book, and what a wonderful opportunity to to read such tomes in this time.
Yeah, this book is one of my favorites. It really is on my short list. And The Future of Money talks about 4 potential scenarios for the future, a couple of which are really beautiful and a couple of which are really scary. And Bernard passed a year ago and was a friend of mine for many years, and we several times had dinner and coffee, and he always loved chocolate. We would sit and have coffee and chocolate together talking about economics and money and sustainability. And this book, I highly recommend it, and the way he put it together is wonderful. It has lots of 1 or 2 page vignettes and lots of little sidebar asides that really help with the assimilation of the information that he's presenting. And he was one of the economic technocrats who helped create the convergence mechanism when the various European nations were turning their national currencies into the euro. So he has a very deep technical understanding of money, the functions of money, and it's just a wonderful read. So I do recommend it to folks who are interested in that. And as we're getting into things like cryptocurrency over time and how that might relate to sustainability efforts, I think that Bernard probably has more wisdom and guidance to share than just about anybody, honestly, on that topic. And so for any of you who might be interested in things like cryptocurrency, I would say this is a must-read, actually. Must-read. And so I'm also reading a novel by Goethe, one of my absolute favorite authors and thinkers. He has been referred to as the Shakespeare of Germany. And it's called Elective Affinities in English, in translation. And he's also a poet and a scientist, and was engaged in things like herbal medicine and working with light and sound and frequency. If any of you are familiar with the practices in the quadrivium, Goethe was way into that kind of stuff. In addition to writing one of the classics, Faust, that many of us would be familiar with, and the whole Faustian bargain, right, when we're playing with technology and so forth. The cautionary tone of some of his wisdom is really really imperative, I think, in these times as well. And I just thought Artem helped me get comfortable with the idea of maybe reading a poem or two just to share a little creativity that's happening here. And so my son, Hunter, who, by the way, did an amazing video for climate change for his senior high school class as part of a C-SPAN competition he participated in. And we ended up sharing that through podcast episode number 67. So that's my boy, Hunter Chestnut Perry. And he and I are collaborating, putting together a book that is poetry I've written over the last 25 plus years with a bunch of his artwork. And I'm super excited about all this coming together. We will be sharing it publicly in the next month or two, so keep an eye out. And I just thought I'd share a couple of the really short pieces as a way to, I don't know, share a little poetry. I know not everyone loves poetry, but this one is half of a haiku, and the invitation is to imagine the other half on your own as you're connecting with nature. And it's apropos we're out here in the woods right now, because it goes like this. Mist droplet dangling from green leaf. So I just invite you to picture that mist droplet dangling from green leaf. Whatever comes next is up to you. And I wrote that one, if you can believe it, the year my daughter, Osha, was born, 1997. So that goes back a little ways. And around that same time, I wrote one that's also quite short, not as short as a haiku, but it's called We Soon Recrudesce. And this morning I was like, gosh, I better look that word up and just make sure I know exactly what it means. And it turns out I remember it meaning sort of becoming alive or active again, but it also means to break out and is used in the context of viruses sometimes. So that's kind of interesting. But it doesn't necessarily mean a viral outbreak. It can have a very positive connotation as well. And so this one goes, we soon recrudesce, l'homme nouveau, humanity, springtime sproutings from dark, musty mold, burnt all winter by frigidity and harsh rains. Gray fogs lift, float elsewhere, slowly, as we blink, no squint, in rediscovered brilliance. So that piece, again, came to me about 20 years ago and was really feeling this sense that our modern human story and experience on the planet in our lifetime is really inviting us to create and to live into something new and something different, and dare I say something better. And we have this opportunity together, and it's very much that impulse that is behind all the work we're doing with the Y on Earth community. And just want to take this opportunity to further invite each and every one of you to engage even more with what we're up to. And if you want, you can find the global map of our ambassadors and projects and resources we're connected to all around the world. That's also at yonearth.org. Under the resources section, you'll see a link to global map. You'll also see the location of most of our podcast guests. The last couple I need to update, I'll admit that on camera. But virtually all of them are there, so you can see where people are located, including, for example, our friend Safi Kaskas in Saudi Arabia. And so join us in this work and take advantage of the products we have with Waylay Waters. If you go to the yonearth.org website, under the community section, you'll see there's a page for the Waylay Waters monthly program. You can also go to waylaywaters.com to download your own free soaking ceremony guide, right? As you were talking about candles and kind of your setup, that made me think of that. And so what an amazing time. What a tremendously challenging time. And in all of this, I think there really is a whole lot of silver lining that we can connect with and that we can perceive with our vision back to the VUCA, and that we can deliberately cultivate in our day-to-day. This coming week in particular is a real opportunity, I think, Artem, for all of us.
Yeah, I love that line in the poem you just read of springtime sprouting. It's just such a vivid image of what that really looks like. And as I visualize what sprouting means, it first starts with deep rootedness. And so there's the seed, and then as it really grows out and has those shoots that first go into the ground, and then there's a shoot going up, that we apply ourselves in that same way. And what's truly inspiring to me about going through this time period is that we get to do that with other people. We might be socially distanced physically, but we can come together virtually, and we can help each other to grow those roots so that our communal shoot and the sprout that rises up above the ground can be strong and vibrant and produce fruit. And that fruit really is about a sustainable future, and it's about continuing the dialogue, continuing the conversation of how do we continue to build and encourage our cities to have communal gardens. How do we petition our HOAs to have food and not lawns? and how do we continue to pass legislation to ban some of the harmful pesticides that are out there in our home department stores that and building supply stores that really have no business in being on the shelves because of how powerful of a poison they are.
They really compromise our immune systems, among other things, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's at the end of the day, it's not just about the birds and the bees, and obviously birds and the bees are so important. But as we consider our own health in this time period, it is directly about taking care of ourselves by placing some of these limitations on poisons and encouraging organic and above that biodynamic growth and gardening, and continuing the conversation with people who might not be aware of the differences or just how impactful some of these different approaches can be. It's something that really happens very slowly, and that's something to really pay attention to. The fact that our situation overall is much more dire on this planet than just the COVID-19 crisis. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason that we're so reactive to it is because it's so visceral for us. The changes between having 3 cases and thousands with thousands of deaths is a matter of a few weeks. We as humans do pretty well with that timeline. We can see the effects of not taking action very directly, and so we can't help but to take action. And as we take action in combating COVID-19 and really creating a resilient society out of this, and encouraging healthy outcomes from the situation, let's not forget, let's really remember that there's a much larger crisis at hand that plays out a lot slower, but is so much more detrimental to our complete future and survival on this planet as a species, and that the urgency is just as real, if not more real, than the virus itself.
Yeah, and that's the climate and ecological crisis,
right?
Specifically,
right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm hopeful, Artem, that so many of us are gonna deepen, to use your description of the roots, deepen our connection with Earth, with wisdom, with knowledge, and grow even more robustly together in community to tackle these big challenges that we're facing. And it's going to take a lot of vision. It's going to take a lot of agility. It's going to take a lot of understanding. It's going to take a lot of clarity. And may we really do what we can to cultivate that as individuals, as friends, among family and community. It really is a big and beautiful opportunity for us.
Yeah, it is, and I'm honored to be a part of this network, and to the listeners out there who are listening to this podcast, I encourage you to check out some of the resources that are available as part of the Y on Earth community, part of the Y on Earth Ambassador Network, and reach out to people directly in this network, and to the people who are directly leading the way in the narrative around all of these issues. And not only the issues, but the implementation of what we want more of in our world. And there's some really wonderful efforts underway. So the more that we can be in communication with the people in those areas, and create our own hubs in our own communities around these things, this is the time to do that, and take the opportunity of a bit of a home retreat, if you will, if that's what you're experiencing, to think about you would like to reach out, and how would you like to reach out to the people around you, and how do you want to support others, and how would you like to be supported by these efforts. This is an open conversation, so reach out, DM, PM, email, text, live stream, live broadcast, hashtag, like do all the things. And then once you're kind of good on that digital communication front, dig in and, get your hands dirty.
I love it, Artem. And yeah, one of the things we're in the process of implementing is a page on the website that shows all of our individual ambassadors and what they've accomplished thus far. And the invitation to ambassadors is to create a short video, 1 to 2 minute video, sharing a little about each individual and what they're up to in terms of projects and so forth. So if that's something that speaks to you, that's just another kind of echo of that invitation to engage in that way as well. And I'm struck as you were talking about the opportunity for food gardens in neighborhoods with HOAs and so forth, that one of the things we've been working on for a few months now is a handbook, a resource for neighborhoods and HOAs, specifically around stewardship and sustainability.
So excited for that one.
It's funny because over the last few days, I was just like, I'm going to use a cuss word. Shit. Like, this is the worst time to bring something like that out. And then I was, as we're thinking about it, and as we've been talking over these last couple of days, I'm realizing, wait a minute, this actually could be a very perfect time for something like that to come out, because a big part of the thread running through all of that is increased resilience, health, and well-being at that scale.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, yeah, this probably will be in some ways an even more timely resource to be sharing with folks.
Absolutely. Yeah, and resilience and putting food on the table, it's goes beyond any kind of political divides or any of those things. It's taking care of ourselves and living in communities that take care of one another, that communicate with the neighbors that are next door and in the larger community, making sure that the people are okay around us, that they're taken care of, and that we have resilient communities that grow food together. And this is a wonderful time to engage HOAs and some of these other associations in that conversation, because it's very real for folks.
Yeah, it really is, Artem. I'm reminded of in Slovenia, most of the families in that beautiful little nation have pretty sizable gardens. It's just part of the culture there, and that goes back a few hundred years in the history. And you would call these either really large gardens or really small farms, basically. And so they've got an incredible food resilience and sustainability woven into the social fabric and into the physical reality of that way of being. And there's still a very technical industrial economy, right? And so we really can, this is a both and in terms of what opportunities lie directly in front of us and what doors are opening up to us as a culture, as a society in the midst of this crisis. And I wanted to just take a quick opportunity to thank our sponsors in our ecosystem for making all this work possible. And that includes many individuals and ambassadors who have joined our monthly giving program. A huge thanks to each of you. And you can join the monthly giving program on the donate button at the top of the website, whyonearth.org. At any level helps all of this work that we're doing. And I want to also give a special shout out to the Lidge Family Foundation. Brad and Lindsay have been incredibly supportive of all of this work for several years now. including during the time that the book itself, Why on Earth, was being written and edited and completed for publishing. And just a reminder that Why on Earth is available as an ebook and as an audiobook. So that's another resource you may enjoy checking out. And there's a chapter called Grow where we talk about growing some of your own food. We talk about getting some of your food from farmers in your region, and then getting other food and beverage products from fair trade and certified organic purveyors that are bringing the teas and the coffees and the bananas and the avocados to us from different communities all around the world. And we're so excited to be collaborating with the Rodale Institute and that ecosystem of organizations, Patagonia, Dr. Bronner's, Demeter, and others, who are launching the certified, the regenerative organic certification later this year as a way for all of us to rally around the entire spectrum of social and environmental practices when it comes to our food production, as well as our clothing fiber production. And so that's just an exciting thing that's underway. It's happening, and we get to rally behind that in a big way. And of course, want to give also a shout out to Purium, who is providing a whole bunch of organic phytonutrient-based supplements and health and wellness products. And you can click on the Purium link from the sponsor page or the podcast page on the Y on Earth website to get your products. And some of the proceeds come back to support the Y on Earth community. And of course, Earth Coast Productions, Artem's company, doing all of this amazing video live streaming technology and media work for a variety of companies and organizations. That's earthcoast.com. And then Waylay Waters, as we've been mentioning and discussing, please check Waylay Waters out at waylaywaters.com. And I think that I want to ask you, Artem, about how is this impacting your business, right? And what are we seeing? Because you do so much work with conferences and events, and we know in that community that there are some very real impacts that people are already experiencing. And I'm really interested in not only how those impacts are showing up, but also you're very with a lot of agility, pivoting and responding in really interesting, creative, and strategic ways right now. And thought it might be a nice opportunity to ask you about that.
Yeah, thank you. And certainly happy to be working with Y on Earth and supporting you and supporting all of the media needs there. And yeah, this time is definitely challenging for everyone who's in some way an event business or is doing business with event businesses. And that includes, conferences and musicians and concerts and venues. Weddings are having to be put on hold, travel plans. Everybody's very much impacted by all of this. And tourism globally is definitely taking a hit. And even restaurants, which you don't typically think of as an event business, but it is an event to go out, are being impacted in terms of a drop in reservations and all of those things since people are staying at home. And I certainly work with a number of nonprofits and for-profit businesses in various industries that had to cancel their events, had to cancel their conferences. And some of this is very meaningful work, very impactful work. There's a number of nonprofits whose entire yearly budgets, or a very significant majority of their yearly budget, is directly dependent on a particular event and a live auction or a fundraiser that happens at that event, and those are having to be put on hold or canceled, which totally impacts the bottom line for that organization, nonprofit. And so my biggest message to everyone who is thinking about canceling their event is don't cancel live stream, live broadcast the event. There are ways to structure it. You can do a online live auction. You can hold certainly multi-camera live broadcasting conferences, telesummits and teleconferences. And there are ways to make those experiences completely interactive with quizzes and forums, and keep people's engagement up, and even have two-way communication with video capabilities for both the presenters and the participants. And so if you have any questions, definitely reach out. I'm happy to help, happy to consult. I offer free consultations for folks who are interested in live streaming and live broadcasting. And there's an incredible opportunity to augment some of the challenges that are coming about with the coronavirus and all of the cancellations with the online experiential interactive way of doing video. So it's something that I actually encourage all businesses to be considering moving forward, in addition to their in-person portion of the event, either way. And then, unfortunately now the in-person part of the event can't really happen. And so definitely aware of how much that means to folks who depend on event production and events to happen, for people to get together for a wonderful night out with music and dancing, which it's certainly not the same dancing in your living room, but you do get to enjoy the wonderful music of your favorite musicians.
I dance much more freely in the living room.
There you go.
Yeah, but the impacts obviously are very immediate and are really really significant in certain sectors of the economy right now.
Yeah. I'm aware and speaking to a few of my friends who are actually shutting down their businesses and having to let go of employees, and so we're certainly just beginning to feel the repercussions of this time period. And so as we're going through this time together, just be aware of those impacts, and reach out on that front as well, of let's brainstorm together on what's possible. None of us really hold the answer, but I think as we come together and kind of openly discuss, like, here's what's happening, here's the impact, and what is possible, how do we continue to engage, how do we continue to support each other with donations and other really important work that our businesses are doing. There's wonderful ways that it can continue to happen, even if it's a big pivot from business as usual.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It's requiring adaptation, right?
Adaptation.
And who was it? Some great thinker said something like, adaptation is the mark of intelligence. I'll try to dig that up for the show notes when we publish this. So
I've seen that one before. I've heard that statement. And it's to be able to adapt to these environments is how we've survived thus far as a species. We all come from a long line of people who have survived all kinds of cataclysms and disasters and various plagues, and this is certainly, in that larger scheme of things, a bump in the road. Of course, it doesn't feel that way now. Certainly doesn't feel that way for me. I've had a number of events canceled, and just truly trying to help people continue to just stay engaged with their community.
I think there's an interesting observation to make, which is simply by virtue of being alive right now as a human being, necessarily indicates that we come from people who have survived calamity and catastrophe in the past. And so, we've as a species been through a lot of different really challenging times and episodes, and have thus far made it through. And I think hopefully we can draw a little bit of strength from that knowing, and that DNA knowing lives in us, and to hold that precious each day as we're going forward right now. So I think I have only one other item on my list that I wanted to share, Artem, for this particular episode, and then I wanted to do just kind of a recap summary for everyone about the various things we hit on.
Sure.
So I don't know if is there anything else that you want to mention as well that is maybe on the list here or that we had discussed over the last couple of days?
I think just continuing with creativity, just really the importance of asking yourself what you want to bring in the world, and perhaps you already know that, and just working on those projects. And I know you've got something cooking that you might
I was
want
going to say,
to
that's like a perfect segue.
share on.
Did you set that up? I guess you did. Yeah, so I'm sharing this, I think, for two reasons, maybe three. One is that it really, I think, highlights the importance of storytelling in all of the work that we're doing to help transform and to help heal. Secondly, I think I want to share this because up till now, it's only been a very small number of friends and family who know about this particular project. And there's a certain power in telling more people that this thing is quite substantial at this point and will be shared with the world soon. And so I've been working on a novel and a screenplay for a little while now. And by a little while, I mean a couple years. And what I'm holding here is the first section out of 3. It's a 3-act story, which just about a week ago, I completed a full edit run through. And the other 2 sections are quite far along. There's a lot more to do. But this is one of the things that I'll be working on in the coming weeks. Hours and hours of work goes into book writing. It's remarkable. I've managed organizations. I've done a lot of different types of work over the years, graduate school, etc. And writing books for me is one of the most challenging things I've ever endeavored to accomplish in terms of the discipline that's required. Because, right, like in business, we respond to all kinds of external stimuli, right? Customer needs show up, market dynamics shift, whatever it might be. But when it's something like writing a book, essentially, there is nothing but this internally generated willful desire to move the project forward. And there are plenty of days, especially when editing something thick like this, and it takes hours, where you feel like you're making no progress at all. But it's that stick-to-itness, that determination, that grit that comes into play in so many different aspects of our lives that is what determines whether you end up with something like a book or not. And I know a lot of us have ideas for books, and some of us write books, and that takes an extraordinary amount of patience and willfulness. And I guess I share this as a way to encourage you all. If you have a poem, if you have a painting, a drawing, if you have some crochet, some sewing, something that you want to do it. Just sit down and start to do it. And what will flow from that choice to do it, I think, is incredibly magical, incredibly vitalizing, and often we get surprised in these utterly delightful ways by the mystery of what unfolds when we're willing to engage with that creativity in that way. So this is a story called Otto, coming soon, and stay tuned for that. And yeah, just to recap, health, well-being, take care of yourself, soak, yoga, herbal medicine. Check out the podcast with Brigitte Mars, number 19. Check out the podcast Artem and I did a year ago, number 31. The podcast with Dr. Jandel Allen-Davis, episode 30. Definitely want to mention the podcast with Eric Lombardi, which was episode 65, in which we talk about social enterprise. These are for-profit businesses that are devoting at least half of their profits to social and environmental nonprofit organizations and causes. And Waylay Waters is an example of that. Soilworks, which we're in the process of launching, is an example of that. And we've got a couple others that are in development right now that you'll be hearing about in the coming months. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget, if you want to join the Waylay Waters monthly program through Y on Earth, you can go to yonearth.org under the community section, scroll to the Waylay page, and you'll see that you can sign up at the $33, the $88, or the $133 level, your choice. And the first 10 folks to do that will get a free tin of the hemp CBD salve that we're in the process of launching. So really excited to share that with you all. And just remember, we're all in this together. And we have so much to be grateful for: health, well-being, friendship. And I think, Artem, when we first talked about doing this episode together a few weeks ago, we were thinking a lot about the neurobiochemistry and stress and co-regulation in relationships, especially when we have a professional relationship that is also a friendship, like you and I have. And I'm inclined to say, hey, let's do another one of these episodes fairly soon and do a bit more of a dive on that as well, because I think there's so much in there that we can unpack and share, and I know you have a lot of insights around that. So I want to articulate that as a gesture into the future and what we'll be doing in the near term.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah, there's so many capacities in our lives, and being supported by people and like actively cultivating that community is how you make that work. I'm glad you hit on a wonderful keyword that I'm tracking right now as well, which is grit, and like that's what it takes through these creative projects to bring them to completion and even to start them. And one of the key components that are a part of grit are the people that are part of your life as well. And I just encourage everyone to cultivate that. It's something that takes work, and it's wonderful, wonderful work. And again, we're fortunate enough to be living in a time when if you have an interest, you just go on meetup.com and you type in what you're interested in, and then there's a local group down the street from you that meets on that topic, every week or once a month or whatever. And so, for those of us who might be more on the introverted side, there's ways to engage via live video, or perhaps it's an opportunity to kind of work through that one as well with grit. But to show up and really engage with the people in our communities. The more that we can be offline and meeting and having conversations in person, the more that we can be supportive of each other as friends, as business and coworkers, and otherwise sojourners through life, as whatever happens in our world unfolds, including the current situation. And that's really the way to overcome it, and to work on the wonderful creative works of art that keep us moving forward. So I definitely look forward to more on Otto and being able to actually read and learn more about that story. So excited for that.
Yeah, me too, Artem. I'm really excited about that. And yeah, just remember, everybody, spring is not canceled.
It's not canceled, folks.
Hashtag. Please use that hashtag.
Go plant some tomatoes and peppers and potatoes.
Yep. And herbal medicine. Nettles are easy to
awesome.
propagate. So, take care, everybody, and look forward to corresponding with you very soon. And spring is not canceled. And thank you for joining us, and thank you for engaging and being a part of the Y on Earth community.
The Y on Earth Community Stewardship and Sustainability podcast series is hosted by Aaron William Perry, author, thought leader, and executive consultant. The podcast and video recordings are made possible by the generous support of people like you. To sign up as a daily, weekly, or monthly supporter, please visit yonearth.org/support. Support packages start at just $1 per month. The podcast series is also sponsored by several corporate and organization sponsors. You can get discounts on their products and services using the code YONEARTH, all one word with a Y. These sponsors are listed on the yonearth.org/support page. If you found this particular podcast episode especially insightful, informative, or inspiring, please pass it on and share it with a friend whom you think will also enjoy it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. And thank you for being a part of the Y on Earth community.